the Self-Management Program of Southeastern Ontario. We would like to welcome you to the 9th of our series of Lunch and Learn webinars for healthcare professionals, which is part of our efforts to build various communities of practice in the region. I just have a few housekeeping pieces to mention before we begin. As you will notice, you are all currently muted. In just a moment, I will unmute everyone. If someone is on the phone but for some reason cannot access the webinar piece online, please speak up at that time and I'll take down your information in order to troubleshoot offline. Then before beginning again, I will mute everyone once more. If you have any issues during the webinar, please get my attention by virtually raising your hand by clicking on the little hand icon that's on the little dashboard that comes with this whole webinar software. You can also then type any information into the chat box or the comment box, which is also in that area. So I am just about now to unmute everyone. Does anyone have any issues accessing the webinar and needs to speak up right now?
Hello?
Hi. Did you have a problem accessing the webinar, or are you okay? Okay, so I'm going to assume everyone is fine with the webinar technology, and I'm going to mute everyone once more. Again, if any issues come up, you just raise your hand virtually and or type something into the chat box, and I will follow up with you at that time. So just to let you know, we will be answering questions at the end, but please feel free to type them into the chat box as you think of them. And that way, if you're worried about forgetting them, you won't have to have that problem. At that time, then at the end, I will read out any of the questions out loud and unmute everyone so that we can have a bit of a discussion. If you would like a printout of the slides with spaces for notes that will be used, it can be downloaded from our website, and the direct link is provided in your reminder emails. Now I would like to present our speaker for our 9th webinar, Self-Management and Healthy Eating and Exercise, with Christine Young. Christine graduated from Ryerson University in Toronto and completed her clinical internship in Winnipeg. She has worked in Toronto and rural Northern Ontario in a variety of clinical settings, including long-term care, acute care, and a family health team. Currently, Christine is the registered dietitian at the Trenton site of the Belleville and Quinte West Community Health Center, where she has been working for almost 2 years. So now I'm going to pass on the screen and the phone to Christine. So that's just going to take a moment, and then we'll be seeing her presentation. So Christine, you should be good to go.
Yep. Hello? I think I'm good to go. So hi everyone, my name's Christine, and I'm going to just jump right into our material here because we do have quite a bit of information to cover regarding helping clients self-manage healthy eating and exercise. So with the next slide here, you can see Belleville and Quinte West CHC, we've been around for a few years. And as Danielle mentioned, I'm currently working at the Trenton site. And in the picture on the left, you can see clients participating in our urban polling program that's run by our health promoter. And on the right, that would be Marcia, our ED, posing in front of our Belleville site. So most of you are probably familiar with CHCs and know that we want to be inclusive in providing care and addressing the social determinants of health. And although not all of our clients are low income, a disproportionate number do have many, many barriers related to self-management. So for example, issues with housing, food insecurity, poverty, mental health or addictions, and low literacy. So just a little bit about my role in self-management. I do quite a bit of one-on-one counseling. So that's with health promotion, diabetes management. I see a lot of people for pre-diabetes, high lipids, some prenatals, because we know teen pregnancy rates high in our area. And one-on-one visits can be a good thing for self-management when people are motivated and they're engaged. They have questions and they are able to follow through and like to report back changes they've made or how they're doing with their goals. Some clients do better in group situations, though, because of the social benefit, and they also feel maybe a little bit less on the spot, which is why we do run a lot of group programs at our center as well. So some of the group programs that we do run, we have several. So ones that I'm a part of, we do have a Working on Wellness program right now that's called the WOW group, and it's basically a monthly group where people meet and we have a new health or wellness topic related to self-management every month, and our clients take turns making a healthy snack each time. So there's we help put some of that self-management skills into practice as well, and that's run by RD and social work or social work and our community resource worker. And we have a lot of topics that we change, and we keep it pretty informal and interactive. We do have nutrition workshops. It's called Healthy Bites in Trenton here, and that's a monthly group where I'll facilitate some discussion around a topic related to nutrition. So portion distortion at restaurants, understanding nutrition labels, that kind of thing. And then we do also have cooking groups. So we have a community kitchen where people come together and they cook and enjoy a meal, and they can practice their cooking skills. And then, of course, we have a diabetes support group, and then our Living Well series. And then we also partner with various agencies to coordinate presentations for Babies and Beyond, Food for You. So these ones we try to help our higher risk, younger, low-income moms by providing a bit of education. So we usually do that pretty informally by playing games, cooking together, facilitating discussion, that kind of thing. So the hands-on cooking piece is pretty important. We do groups, but for some people who are not comfortable in groups, I do offer one-on-one cooking appointments. So with clients, for example, I've had one man who was on ODSP and spending quite a bit of money on prepared Caesar salads from the Metro. And when we got into it, it turned out that he didn't know how to wash lettuce, and when he made it at home, he said it tasted like sand. So obviously, he wasn't washing the lettuce well enough. So we had cooking appointments where we've made salad and dressing together, and tried new simple recipes to help. Oh, I think something's popped up here. I'm just going to close it. So we've had appointments where we've helped, we've tried new recipes to help use up some of the pasta that he was getting from the food bank because he was sick of eating the same thing. So it was usually canned tomato sauce and pasta that he was having, and he had stockpiled huge amounts of pasta from the food bank. So in addition to all of this, a huge part of my role in self-management is being able to identify when a client could use the help of other services. So, for example, in Trenton, we have a free meal program at the Salvation Army. We have 2 food banks. And then within the center itself, we have a diabetes educator nurse, we have a pharmacist, a community resource worker who helps to connect people to services within the community, and also do paperwork and things like that. And then we also have 2 social workers at our site here. So moving on to self-management of healthy eating, things that I assess usually, I've kind of put them in a list. Usually, obviously readiness to change is a huge one, starting where clients want to start is pretty important. Looking at food security, the capacity to buy food, that's a huge one. We can do about helping to connect people to more resources. Knowledge of healthy food, balanced meals, calorie awareness, understanding nutrition facts labels. Those are big ones to touch on, and depending on the client, things are tailored to their needs, because sometimes we do have clients that are pretty low literacy, and it's more focusing on, what does a healthy plate look like, moderation of kind of snack foods, high-calorie foods, sweets, and that kind of thing, rather than looking at the actual nutrition label. And then, of course, the skills to prepare and cook food. We do, if we're following recipes, there are usually some literacy involved. but if it's somebody who's lower literacy, we usually can have one of our other participants help or have a support person there. And then tools that are needed. Not everyone has pots and pans at home, so usually we can come up with a way to get secondhand equipment or keep it pretty simple. And then the other thing is also to have a safe place to learn and practice skills. So in our kitchen here, we do have that teaching kitchen. So I found this, and I thought this was pretty interesting stuff. The National Weight Registry data, that's something that has come out of a couple of doctors in the States, and they've collected data on over 10,000 individuals who have lost pretty significant amounts of weight and kept it off for long periods. So their criteria for collecting information is they're collecting data on people who have lost at least 30 pounds and kept it off for at least 1 year by lifestyle interventions. And their findings give us kind of what's required, or what's the secret for long-term maintenance of weight loss, and this is pretty interesting. So what are some of the healthy habits of the successful losers? We have the majority who eat breakfast every day. 75% weigh themselves at least once a week, so there's a bit of self-monitoring there. 62% watch less than 10 hours of TV per week, and 90% exercise on average about an hour a day. And most people do continue to have a low-calorie, low-fat diet and are doing high levels of activity to maintain their weight loss. So that's pretty interesting because it gives us some insight into what we can encourage our clients to do. So the best weight approach, this is something out of the Canadian Obesity Network from their resource online called Best Weight, a Practical Guide to Office-Based Obesity Management. And their whole approach is that a patient's best weight is whatever weight they can achieve while living the healthiest lifestyle that they can truly enjoy. So if a client cannot make any further diet or exercise changes without feeling miserable, then that is going to be the best weight that they can achieve. Because otherwise any forced changes or habits that they do not want to develop will only be temporary, and the weight will eventually be gained back. So this is a pretty interesting resource. It's free online when you register for a membership, which is also free, and it's just being part of the Canadian Obesity Network. And there's quite a bit of, sorry, I've got to pop up here again. So there's quite a bit of interesting pointers that they do have in there. You know, they talk about repeated weight cycling and how that usually leads to a loss of muscle mass over time and a gain of adipose tissue, so that over time you have a disproportionate amount of fat and not very much lean muscle tissue left, and this definitely affects metabolism, how strong people are, and how able they are to, if they're elderly, how able they are to take care of themselves independently. So this is an interesting one to look into. They do offer a lot of useful tips and good insight into what the barriers are to weight loss. For example, people grossly overestimate the amount of calories burned through exercise and can easily eat those calories back plus more. So they do have, you know, charts of if you do this much exercise, you can burn off this many calories. But you know, if you have this amount of pop, well, that's pretty much you've consumed that amount back plus more. Readiness stage, so I talked a little bit about this, so you want to consider the stage of change, of course, and I won't go into, you know, pre-contemplation, contemplation, all of that, but if clients are ready for something, so if they say they want to lose weight, this motivation needs to be turned into something that we can take action on. So what is the client ready for and motivated to do? Because sometimes clients will say, I want to lose weight, but I like my, I like my beer every night. I like my, snacking every night, and that's not going to change. Or, I know my portions are bigger, but that's, it's a social meal, whatever it is, and they're not ready to change that, then we have to look at what specifically we could change. So is it activity? Is it, better or healthier food choices for snacking? Is it better planning for meals so that we don't eat out as often, that kind of a thing, and working from there. So with readiness to change too, especially with our population, we want to determine if our client has any immediate concerns to address. So I've seen clients in my office who are in tears because they're here because they've been referred, and they feel like, yes, I should do something, but there's other issues. So there might be relationship issues that are upsetting them, or there's trouble with secure housing right now, so they're very stressed out. So with readiness to change, I mean, we have to address priorities that are pressing, obviously. So usually, in that case, I will refer to social worker or community resource worker, and then follow up with them at a later time. Food security. So that one's a big one when it comes to self-management. And I just have the definition here. Food security, this is from the World Health Organization. So when all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. So we know that a lot of our clients aren't always sure that they have food to eat, and it's not always a guarantee, right? And we take that for granted. So that's something definitely that I will address with a lot of my clients before we even get into making any changes. So I usually try to assess, can the client afford to make changes at this time? Usually clients like to wait until they get their next check at the end of the month before they set aside a little bit of money. Sometimes there's other issues that are taking priority in terms of finances. So what can we do to increase the amount of resources that our client would have in order to improve their diet? So can we look into getting maybe a special diet allowance to see if they can be eligible for that? Can we see if they can get some staples from the food bank so that they have a little bit of extra money to play with? Those are usually some things that we'll try to find out. So the other piece too is the food banks. I mean, food banks get a bad rap sometimes because most of the things they have are going to be canned, non-perishable. Our food bank in Trenton is pretty lucky. We have our Care and Share food bank that has a community garden that supplies them with, I think it's like hundreds of pounds of vegetables every year. So they do have lots of healthy food to give out. But some of the canned goods they're perfectly healthy foods, but they don't get used up because clients are unsure what to do with chickpeas or canned beans or whatever it is. So usually I'll try to touch on that and see if there's something we can do with all this stuff. So like my client who had tons of dry pastas stockpiled because he was sick of having it with just plain canned tomato sauce. Well, what can we do to spice things up and keep it interesting and yet use up the resources that we do have? So I talked a little bit about this with a special diet allowance. Most of you probably know that. Some of the common eligible conditions for a special diet allowance, and these are for people usually on OW or ODSP. Common eligible conditions are diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, BMI over 40. I think that was raised from 30 not too long ago, so that one can be tricky, but it does give a little bit of extra money. I mean, it's not lots of cash. It might be $50, $80 extra, but for someone who doesn't have a lot, that's quite a bit of money that can make a difference. and the diet allowance can be signed off by an RD, MD, NP, and I think a midwife as well. So this is a program that we also have at our center, the Good Food Box, and they do have this, I think, throughout the region. This is something I'll bring up with a lot of my clients, and not only people who are limited in terms of financial resources, because it's open to everybody. I usually, you know, it's a good idea because you do get more bang for your buck, and it makes it a bit easier in terms of, you know, can we set aside $5 or $10 when you get your next paycheck to put towards vegetables or fruit? And then if the answer is yes, what can we do with that box of vegetables or fruit? So usually, you know, you get a bag of carrots, onions, potatoes, and look at maybe building some skills in terms of preparing vegetables if that's not something that the client is able to do already. Knowledge of healthy eating. So I won't go into, you know, Canada's Food Guide, plate method, but I like these because they are visual and they do have pictures, and clients often, if they're lower literacy, they can relate to, yes, I do like carrots, I do like this. And I like them because I like the handy portion guide. That's from the Canadian Diabetes Association. It makes it a lot easier for clients to understand when we're looking at, you know, the composition of a meal, what should be on the plate, versus something like the food guide. I don't find the food guide to be all that user-friendly because sometimes people can't picture, you know, for the whole day, this is what they're supposed to be having, but it sounds like a lot. So I may go through the food guide with somebody if that's something that's appropriate, or I may just look at, you know, looking at the healthy plate instead. And it may not be that the client can get up to, you know, 2 different kinds of vegetables at a meal. It's just looking at, you know, the different colors on your plate and looking at getting a bit more variety than they are already. Because I do have several clients who will just eat like 3/4 of a pack of hot dogs at a meal, and they'll be full. But it's trying to make small changes so that they're realistic and they're doable, right? And we'll look at that later on as well. So Canada's Food Guide, most of you probably know this is free to order online from Health Canada. And the Diabetes Food Guide, which I haven't put up here, is a pretty good one. It's more suited to diabetes, but there is a cost to that one, and that can be ordered online if you just Google Diabetes Food Guide. So knowledge of cooking, recipe modifications, most recipe books, magazines, like the Canadian Living, you know, they have some awesome pictures, foods that look delicious in their magazines or in their cookbooks, but they're higher in fat and salt and sugar. So I will usually talk to people about, you know, cutting salt in half or not using it if you're going to be adding, you know, canned diced tomatoes to that, or chicken broth, or something that already has quite a bit of sodium in it. And most times you can reduce the oil by half and add applesauce or yogurt to muffins, banana bread, waffles, and pancakes, that kind of thing. So I think it's starting with where people are able to make changes. Some people never get up to this because they're still going to be having the processed foods because they're not ready to make changes in terms of changing their food prep. They know a bit of extra fruit or a bit of extra veggies with their meals, and that's the most they're willing to change. And it's really just finding where the client is and working with them on that. Trying and preparing unfamiliar foods, so that's more like, you know, using chickpeas, black beans, trying different vegetables, things like that, but that depends on how open the client is to unfamiliar foods. So food-related habits, usually we'll look into this too because it does make a difference for timing, the pattern, and composition of meals, how fast we eat. emotional eating because of loneliness or boredom or stress, social drinking or eating habits, past history of dieting or weight cycling, and then how much sleep people get. So I usually will ask about this because successful self-management of healthy eating also involves good self-care, right? And kind of like a mindful approach to the way we eat. So trying not to eat in front of a TV. Usually I try to address that kind of a thing. So mindless eating, that kind of brings us to our next topic here. So mindless eating is interesting because it's a term coined by Dr. Brian Wansink, who's a food psychologist who found that, a lot of things can affect how much we eat. So it could be the ambience of a restaurant, it could be the size of a food package, the size of a serving bowl, etc. And we eat with our eyes, so we tend to fill our bowls with cereal and we eat the whole thing. And our cue to stop is when we reach the bottom of the bowl, or when we reach down and eat the last chip out of the bag, or the last M&M out of the package. So we get a lot of our cues from our environment. And Dr. Wansink has done some interesting studies on how marketing influences food choice and how much we eat. And it gives some insight into how we think. So one study that I usually will share with my clients, because they are aware, it's called the Mixed Subway study. So in one study, students were given either a voucher to eat at McDonald's or a voucher to eat at Subway. And those who ate at Subway ate more calories than those at McDonald's because of this health halo surrounding the Subway sandwiches. So people who ate at Subway were more likely to have a foot-long sub. They were more likely to have a cookie or chips added to their meal. They were more likely to have cheese or dressings on their sandwich. And not only that, they also ate, on average, 22% more during the day because they felt they were being good. And this kind of applies to also to kind of the low-fat foods or things that are labeled light. People tend to overestimate how much lower calorie these are and then reward themselves later for being good. So this is something that I'll talk about with my clients to be aware of what you're eating and not let the marketing that we're bombarded by influence how much we're eating or what we eat, because the Subway commercials are pretty powerful. I mean, they're on air quite a bit, and they always promote, we're fresh, we're healthy, we're a good choice, kind of a thing. So just things for clients to be aware of. So what the other things that Dr. Wansink does talk about is, the size of bowls, plates, cups, how often are people eating out, and are most people aware that restaurant portions encourage overeating? This is a teaching cartoon. So this is from Dr. Wansink. You can get a lot of their teaching cartoons online at mindlesseating.org, and I have that link at the end of my slides. And I'll often share these at workshops or talks that I do because people seem to get a kick out of them, and they're pretty informative. So this one is Why the French Don't Get Fat, and it says Parisians are 1.5 times more likely to stop eating because of internal cues, like feeling full, than Chicagoans. And I just thought the way that what they're saying, that just seemed like it's just a pretty cute way to capture the contrast between, when we stop eating. We stop eating when we're full. In Paris, we stop eating when our bowl's empty or our plate's empty and the show's over. Usually in North America. So just eating habits, what we've been taught, all that influences what and how we eat. So portion distortion, I'll usually go over this with clients, and I just did a presentation on this with my Healthy Bites group, just to make people aware of what you get at restaurants. So this one I think is from Boston Pizza, 1,470 calories, so pretty much almost your entire day's worth of calories in one entree. and more fat and salt than you need in a day. So with the nutrition information available now, clients can look up calories, sodium, etc. for menu items from lots of chain restaurants. So they have this online for Boston Pizza, McDonald's, Tim Hortons. Lots of chains have it up now where you can add different foods. So it's like an online nutrition calculator where you pick your items and they tally up the totals for you. And this is not for everyone, but for clients who are computer savvy, higher literacy, they might like something like this. And for clients who are lower literacy, nutrition information might not be very helpful. So maybe encouraging them to make better choices, like maybe getting a burger without the fries, splitting an entree with somebody, or taking half of it home for another meal rather than finishing the whole plate. So it really depends on the client what their self-management strategies are. So the Tim Hortons cup size shuffling, that was pretty recent, I think. So they did this cup size shuffle so that they could bring in their new extra large, which is the 24-ounce cup. So everything got shuffled. So the new small was the old medium, and the new medium was the old large, and etc. So it's important for people to pay attention to actual cup sizes rather than the names, because we see things relative to each other. So we're more likely generally to pick a medium because we tend to avoid extremes. So extremes from either end, so either a small or a large. But what does that translate into if people are not aware of what their choices actually mean? So I did this example with my group, and they seem to get a kick out of it. So the curse of the cup size names. So if Bob has a medium double every day, and he didn't change his order after the cup sizes were shuffled, how much extra sugar would he be having each month? Would it be 20, 30, or 40 packets of sugar? So the answer would actually be 30 packets of extra sugar that he's having just by not changing his order after the cup sizes were shuffled. And how many pounds will that add in a year, assuming that everything else stayed the same? So the additional cream and sugar in that change in cup size would actually add on an additional 7 pounds a year. So pretty shocking stuff, but I think stuff like this shows us that we do need to be conscious of what we're getting, you know, in restaurants. And also, I mean, this could be something at home too, because our mug sizes have changed. So making people conscious of that, I think, makes them better self-managers because they're more aware of what they're taking in. Calorie awareness in food labels. So keeping in line with what we talked about, so helping clients make informed decisions, I often compare calorie needs to budgeting. So sometimes it's not worth it to spend so many calories on a drink or on a food when it takes such a big chunk out of your daily allowance. Using the nutrition facts table resource is one that I'll often use with clients who are okay with numeracy and literacy, and that's a free resource to order from Health Canada. And I also keep a whole bunch of nutrition labels in my office to show clients, you know, how to tell if something is a sometimes or everyday choice, and to compare items like juice versus pop, which we know has the same amount of sugar. And understanding nutrition labels are important in self-management because clients will often ask, you know, what can I eat or what should I not eat? And unless you can give them a complete list of every food item under the sun and update it every few months, the best way is to really help clients understand, you know, how to tell if a food is a healthy choice or not. And that's by using the nutrition facts table. So that is one that can really help in terms of making informed decisions. So tracking intake, that might be a good way for some people if they want to be more conscious of what they're eating, how that's related to emotions. We do have a few clients doing this right now who are seeing the social worker and myself, because they do find there's a huge connection between, their emotions and what and how much they eat. For some clients, if they're looking for weight loss or trying to cut back on their sodium intake, if they're really motivated, there's free online food intake tracking tools that can make it easy to understand how much they're taking in. So there's MyFitnessPal, there's Eat Tracker from Dietitians of Canada, but I find this is a really small subset of people who are computer savvy and are motivated enough to enter the foods that they eat from a database. And this has to be done, of course, every day, so it is very, it can be very cumbersome. So if I do have people do that, usually it's for a short period, just to see how their foods tally up in terms of nutrients over the whole day. But this is a form of self-monitoring that can be helpful, tracking intake. Okay, so we're going to move on to self-management of exercise. And of course, we know all the benefits of exercise, aerobic fitness, insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, heart disease risk reduction, weight management. But really the hardest part is getting our clients motivated to start and then also maintain an exercise routine. So when I assess exercise, a lot of people seem to feel like they're pretty active. They're busy all the time. But when you ask more questions, it sounds like they're busy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're burning a lot of calories or they're being physically active. So that's something that I usually clarify with people. And clients should be aware that doing extra activity, so parking your car a little bit further away from, Walmart, and doing a little bit of extra walking, that's a great thing, but it doesn't warrant any extra food. And that's something that that we really need to get clients to understand, because it does take quite a lot of work to burn off very little. So in here I have an example. So if you have a 160-pound person who walks for 30 minutes at 2 miles per hour, you're going to burn about 102 calories. If you have a 10-ounce glass of apple juice, you're going to be taking in 140 calories. So you'll have eaten that back plus a bit more. Or if you have an extra slice of bread, that's going to be 130 calories, so that's going to be more than what you burnt off. So really making people aware that, exercise is great, but we really need to be cautious that we're not going to be feeling like we need to reward ourselves with food. And this is actually from the Mayo Clinic. They do have a chart for, people at different weights. If they do different activities, how much do they burn off per hour? And that can be a helpful resource to have. So ways to self-manage exercise. We have our FIT principle, self-monitoring and non-food rewards, and then using devices that give instant feedback. So that could be treadmills or ellipticals. That could be something as simple as a pedometer. So the FIT principle, I think most of us know this. We can track how much we're doing in terms of frequency, so how many times a week. Intensity, how easy is it to talk while you're exercising? Type of exercise, is it walking? Is it doing the rowing machine? Is it jogging? Time, so how much time? So usually, I try to get people to if they say they're doing an activity already, something to ramp up the benefits might be to increase time or intensity. Otherwise, something else could be, changing the frequency of it. So instead of going for, 3 walks a week, maybe it's 4. And looking at that to track and increase. Self-monitoring, so I talked a little bit about self-monitoring for healthy eating, and that applies to activity as well. And sometimes it's encouraging for people to mark down how many times they've gone for a walk or gone swimming, and to encourage them to stay on top of it. So using a calendar or exercise log to track date, type, minutes of exercise. Clients can see their progress, and that can be motivating. And non-food rewards can be motivating. So for however many minutes or walks, I get to do whatever. So it could be I get to watch my favorite show. It could be I get to buy myself a magazine. But mainly we're looking at non-food rewards because we don't want to negate what we've just done in terms of burning off our calories. So devices with feedback. We do have these on exercise machines if clients have access to these, and depending on who it is, they may have an exercise machine at home or they might go to the YMCA. But something that I'll do often is I will get clients to borrow a pedometer from our pedometer lending program. And that is one that people seem to really like because it's very simple and it doesn't cost them anything. So pedometers indicate steps taken. Some have a stopwatch. Some have a calorie counter built in, but ours is pretty simple and straightforward. It just counts steps. So the ones we have are from stepscount.com, which I think we ordered in bulk. And clients are encouraged to wear it every day. First, just to track baseline activity, and then increase as able. And there is a resource from the Canadian Obesity Network that is titled How to Use a Pedometer, and it's got tracking charts. I think it's a 1 or 2 page document, and they say you can increase by 500 steps every week to reach your goal number of steps. And for some people that might be too much. For some people that might be doable. So it's really dependent on each person. You know, for some people, if their baseline steps are just, I think one client I have, he's doing 850 steps a day, and that would be considered pretty low because we're looking at the goal is to get close to 10,000. So for 850 steps, it would not be realistic for him to increase his steps by 500 each week because he's really not that active. So for him, it might be increasing by 30 steps every week, and just starting slow and going from there. Goal setting and action planning. So I do talk about this with my clients when we go over, their diet history and their activity level and things like that. And I talk a little bit about what the plate method looks like and the benefits of activity. And I might say, out of everything that we talked about, is there something that you want to change? And then they usually, I find, identify one thing that they feel like, oh, I could do this. So I usually try to get them to break it down into doable steps. So, what is it? How much is it? When can you do this? And how many times? And this is pretty much in line with our what we do in our Living Well workshops. So this is actually from one of my clients who has MS, and she's in her late 60s, I believe, and she's not very mobile, but she wanted to wear her pedometer and she wanted to increase her steps. So the what was walk around the house, the how much was 3 to 5 minutes, when was during commercial breaks, when she was watching TV, and how many she thought she could do it every day. So that's kind of where I would start with somebody who identified, behavior they could change, and just make it more specific. So I think this is just a kind of summary, with healthy eating and exercise, self-management resources. There's lots of resources that you could use, in your community or in your center. So, the Living Well series are really good for the group support and action planning. and they go over all the aspects of self-management, including healthy eating and exercise. Referring clients to a dietitian if you have one in your center or clinic, health promoter, and then being aware of any free or low-cost programs in your community that can provide support. So we know that the YMCA in Quinte West has a discounted price for membership for those whose income is below a certain amount. There's an indoor track in the Belleville area that's free to use. And then in our center, we do have urban polling. We have Healthy Bites workshops. We have our working on wellness programs so that people can get that regular support, which would help with self-management and taking care of their health with a little bit of support. So I just have here some resources that I mentioned throughout the presentation. So the Best Weight is definitely one that's a good resource to have. If you deal with a lot of people who are overweight or obese, they do have a lot of interesting insights and tips. The Mayo Clinic Exercise for Weight Loss, Calories Burned in 1 Hour, that's a good chart to have as a reference. And then I talked about the Mindless Eating Book and the National Weight Control Registry. There is, I think I talked a little bit about calories and just making people aware. So we don't calorie count, but I do like to let people know, what is a lot, what is a little. And there's a Health Canada reference guide that you can print off, and it gives you, average calorie needs for specific gender, age group, and then sedentary, lightly active, active. Using the nutrition facts table, you can order that online. And then I didn't really talk about this, but the Canadian Diabetes Association has a resource called Alcohol and Diabetes, and that one's a really good one for clients who seem to like their alcohol on a regular basis. And if it's quite a bit of it, it really does add up. So beer, wine, coolers. I think with one of my clients recently, she just said she didn't realize that coolers had so many calories. I think it was like 300 calories a cooler, and she was having 2 of them at once, and she was trying to lose weight. So I think that was kind of an eye-opener for her when she saw that resource. So other ones for tracking, self-monitoring, like the MyFitnessPal, Eat Tracker, and the How to Use a Pedometer with the Obesity Network. So I think that is all from my end. And I think we're going to open it up right now for questions.
Yes, actually, there was a question that wanted to ask about community gardens. So, Wanda, I'm going to unmute you right now. You're unmuted, Wanda, and you can ask Christine directly and have a bit of a discussion. And then if you guys feel that we should open it up to everybody, then I can mute everyone.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wanda. Oh, Wanda, are you there? Oh.
No.
She might have stepped away then. So I would ask the question, but it wasn't completely elaborated. She just wanted to ask something about community gardens. Well, what I'll do is unmute everybody else, see if we have any other questions while waiting for Wanda. So everyone, you're unmuted. So if there are any other questions or comments for Christine, you may go ahead and speak. Okay, it doesn't seem like there are any others, so I'm going to mute everyone except for Wanda, and we'll see if Wanda will step in. And if she doesn't step in before we wrap up, or if she's having technical difficulties and we're not hearing her, what I could always do is I'll let her know that she could send it to me, and I'll email it to you, Christine.
Okay, perfect.
And then sort of just put the 2 of you in touch.
Yeah.
So I guess at this time, if anybody has any other last-minute questions or comments, feel free to put it in the chat box or raise your hand. Oh, wait, something has come up here. Let me see. Okay, we actually have a few questions from Wanda, and her microphone isn't working apparently. I'll let her try and clarify the garden one in a moment, but in the meantime, she's also asked, what is the Healthy Bites workshop and how does it run?
Okay, so maybe I can answer that while you're, because it looks like there was a question about community gardens as well. So the Healthy Bites workshop is something that I've just started because it seemed like we were running this group on wellness, and it was we have talked about food in the wellness program, but people seem to want something that's more food focused. So the Healthy Bites workshop was something that I started actually last month. So it runs one afternoon every month, and the topics change. So it's about an hour and a half. And what I've done with them so far is I've done one on nutrition label reading, and then so I'll have a PowerPoint and I'll go through some test your knowledge stuff on there. So it's interactive and there's pictures to look at, so people tend to like that. And I also will have food labels spread out on the table and get clients to look at the labels and tell me if those are healthy choices for every day. Are they sometimes foods, or are they kind of like keep it to once in a while, like once in a blue moon kind of thing. And then also as part of the Healthy Bites workshops, it seemed like people wanted information on unfamiliar foods. So foods like, I foods like tofu. So this is a more motivated group that I wouldn't say they're better. They probably are better resourced. A lot of them are probably retired, a little bit older, so that they are usually better resourced, although it's a mix. And what I've done is also I've given food samples of, I think what I've done so far is like a hummus recipe, and I'll give them the recipe to take home, so they can recreate what they've had. And I think what we've done is also, kale chips or something like that, so that they can try it, like try an unfamiliar food, and then take that recipe home and, recreate it at home, change it up, whatever it is, so that the fear of the unfamiliarity is kind of taken away. So I can send more information if that's something that you're interested in starting up in your area. There's lots you can do, because food is always a hot topic. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, in that case, what I'll say then in regards to that is if anybody is interested in getting more information on the Food Bites program and anything else that she's just spoken about, just email me at that selfmanagement@kchc email that is in your reminder emails, and will also be in your follow-up email that you'll get tomorrow. And then I can put you in touch with Christine and then decide if just one or two people need to get in contact with her on a one-to-one basis, or if maybe I need to be sending something out to all the participants that came today. Either can be a possibility. Wanda says, thank you for answering the Bites question. So we clarified the community garden question that Wanda also had was along the lines that she's contemplating, or they're contemplating at her organization, to create one with some volunteers. And she was wondering if you had any advice or some resources somewhere that might help her out, or we don't know if that's something that you would know about.
Okay, so community gardens, I'm not directly involved with the community gardens here, because that's been taken on by, I think it's community living here. So I don't have any direct involvement, although I know the dietitian at Gateway CHC up in Tweed, I think she helps to run it with the help of a community member. So sometimes it's really helpful to, if you know somebody in the community who's got a green thumb, if they want to, volunteer, get people started in terms of planting and help to run a program, that would be really useful. But I don't have any direct experience myself, but if you want to email me, I can probably put you in touch with Ashley, the dietitian at Gateway, and she's more than willing to share lots of information about it, I'm sure.
I also know someone, our host agency is the Kingston Community Health Centers, and I know that the food worker and good food box person at the North Kingston, is very involved in multiple community gardens and a community market as well. I would assume that she wouldn't mind you emailing her or giving her a call for some tips as well. She's away at the moment, but I think she's back in about a week, week and a half. So if you emailed me, Wanda, as well at the self-management email, I could always get you in contact with that woman. Her name's Mary Wood. And then I could always send your email to Christine so that she could get you in touch with the lady at her organization. Okay, Wanda says thank you very much, and she'll contact both of us for to get connected to those other people with the community gardens.
Perfect.
So at this point, it doesn't look like there's any other questions or comments. Most people have signed off at this point as well. Do you have any last things to say, Christine?
Nope. If there's any questions, or if anyone's wondering, how to start up a program that's similar to some of the ones that I've mentioned, they're more than welcome to contact me. And I think my contact information is just on the last slide there that was sent out, right?
Perfect. And your contact information and a recording of this webinar will be all available in the archives on our website. So, and that archive gets sent out to everybody who attended and who registered and didn't attend. All that gets sent out tomorrow. So they'll be able to get a hold of you that way then.
Okay, awesome.
Perfect. Well, in that case, I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and we hope that you enjoyed the webinar. And we want to thank you, Christine, for doing a great presentation. And outside of that, let's just hope that the nicer weather comes along really quick and that everybody enjoys the rest of their week and weekend.
Yes.
So thanks again, and take care.
Yep, thank you.